By 10 AD, the Roman Empire was a continent-spanning machine of engineered infrastructure and military might. Yet, looking at a map of Europe from this period, that Roman footprint hits a hard, sudden stop right at the Rhine River. This abrupt boundary was not the original plan. Around 20 BC, after securing Gaul, Emperor Augustus made a deliberate effort to cross the Rhine and target Germania for full-scale conquest. The Romans were moving from the developed, agriculturally rich lands of Gaul into a starkly different landscape, a sprawling wilderness of dense forests and marshes. When Germanic tribes launched sudden incursions across the river into Roman territory, Augustus responded by heavily militarizing the Rhine, turning the region into a staging ground for a massive northern expansion. The Rhine border stands as a geographical monument to a breakdown in Roman force projection. The central question is why the ancient world's premier military machine failed to hold northern Europe. The standard narrative suggests that Rome simply abandoned Germania out of psychological shock following a single devastating military ambush. But there is another factor to consider: the possibility that the mounting economic and logistical costs of holding the region were beginning to outweigh the benefits of occupation. To understand this, we have to look at three specific points of friction: logistical overextension, administrative rebellion, and a deeply hostile topography. The eventual Roman retreat may have been less of a failure of nerve and more a strategic reassessment, a decision to prioritize the security of existing borders over the mounting price of expansion. Between 13 and 9 BC, Drusus launched multiple offensives, establishing a network of fortified bases along the Rhine as staging grounds. Drusus bypassed forests by routing supply lines along the Weser, Ems, and Elbe rivers. But pushing eastward, away from logistical hubs, these chains thinned and fragmented. As temperatures dropped, the networks failed, forcing Roman forces to retract their footprint to Gaul. Standard Roman supply chain doctrine was dependent on a continuous flow of supplies carried over engineered roads and navigable waters, infrastructure that Germania did not reliably offer. Following Drusus's death, Tiberius attempted to stabilize the region through diplomatic pressure and the construction of more remote outposts. Yet the core issue remained. The Roman logistical engine struggled with the geography, turning every mile gained into an increasing drain on imperial resources. While the military struggled with the terrain, the imperial bureaucracy began implementing a new census, aiming to standardize tax collection across both Gaul and the newly occupied Germanic lands. Applying rigid Roman wealth extraction methods to decentralized semi-nomadic tribes triggered immediate cultural resistance. Rather than generating revenue, the taxation policy sparked localized uprisings, forcing the Roman military to deploy troops to quell the resulting violence. This created an economic paradox. Rome was expending massive amounts of military capital and manpower solely to suppress the resistance caused by its own attempts to extract resources. The standard mechanism for provincial administration was manufacturing the very opposition the legions were trying to pacify. The Roman military was built around the heavy infantry legion. Their success relied on interlocking shields, rigid command structures, and engineering superiority in open terrain. Northern Germania offered none of that open space. It was a landscape of dense, unbroken woodlands and impassable swamps. This environment disrupted Roman unit cohesion, preventing the legions from deploying into their standard battle formations and neutralizing their primary tactical advantage. The indigenous Germanic tribes adapted by avoiding pitched battles entirely, utilizing highly dispersed skirmish lines instead. They relied heavily on hit-and-run attacks, specifically targeting the highly vulnerable, slow-moving Roman supply columns as they were winding through the dense trees. Rome's doctrine of decisive engagement proved ineffective against an enemy that used the landscape to wage a war of attrition. This resistance eventually found a leader in Arminius, a Germanic hostage raised in Rome who understood the internal mechanics of Roman political and military structure. Arminius faced a difficult task. Historically, the Germanic tribes were fractured and prone to infighting rather than unified action. He solved this by focusing on their shared grievances. By highlighting the pressure of the census and the military occupation, Arminius forged a unified resistance network. The Roman governor, Varus, viewed Arminius purely through the lens of a successfully assimilated, loyal provincial advisor. Varus's trust in the Roman hierarchy was such that when Arminius's own family approached the governor to warn him of treason, Varus dismissed it as petty tribal squabbling. Arminius exploited this administrative blind spot, using his trusted status to hide a massive indigenous mobilization from the empire. To execute his plan, Arminius fabricated reports of a localized rebellion, forcing Varus into a hasty deployment away from the safety of engineered roads. Along the march, Arminius separated from the main column under the guise of gathering tribal allies, but instead went to mobilize his hidden strike force. He guided the Roman forces into a specific topographical trap. The column was forced to navigate a muddy pathway between a steep hill and impassable bog. Forced into a 60-foot wide gap, the Roman column stretched out over several miles, losing its rigid formation. Suddenly, Germanic forces launched synchronized strikes from the elevated tree line, pushing the fragmented Roman troops directly towards the swamp. Because Arminius understood Roman military doctrine, he anticipated and countered the tactical commands Varus attempted to issue during the chaos. The result was a 24-hour slaughter. 3 legions were eradicated, resulting in 15,000 Roman casualties, while Varus fell on his own sword. The Battle of Teutoburg Forest was a total system collapse, where logistical overextension, administrative blindness, and topography intersected. The news caused a wave of shock in Rome. A distraught Emperor Augustus was recorded shouting for Varus to give him back his legions. His successor dispatched Germanicus to launch retaliatory campaigns deep into the forest to avenge the defeat and restore Roman pride. Germanicus achieved several tactical victories against Arminius, but as the campaigns continued, Roman leadership realized that retaliatory strikes did not equate to sustainable pacification. Rome pulled its military footprint back, removing all permanent administrative and military presence from the territory east of the Rhine. The shock of Teutoburg ended the era of continuous expansion, anchoring the empire in a defensive posture along the northern frontier. Rome established the Rhine River as a heavily militarized, defensible natural frontier. This decision reflected a cold economic reality. This balance sheet weighs Germania's low territorial yield against the military costs required to hold it. The capital needed to garrison hostile terrain against a unified resistance was considerable, and compared to provinces like Gaul, the deep Germanic forests offered low economic density. Rome stopped at the Rhine because the empire possessed the bureaucratic discipline to recognize when an investment had become unprofitable. The legions had the military strength, but the cost could no longer be justified.